Hey guys, so you have been assigned kind of I think it's fun, I don't know if you think it's fun, but it's a worksheet, and we're asking you to solve some quadratics and have a little fun with it. You get to choose your method. Now each problem you do, we're asking you to solve using two different methods. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do number one as an example for you so you can kind of get a feel for how you should attack your questions, and then there's, I think, 6 or 8 problems on the worksheet. Like there's 6. I don't know. I feel like there's 8. I think I didn't take all of them. But you only have to choose 2 of them. But remember, you're doing each problem twice. So moving on to the next slide. This is number 1. And on your worksheet, which is in Google Classroom, I didn't put this one in your packet, I don't think. So you'll have to look in the Google Classroom for this. And you can just write down your work on another sheet of paper. You don't need to print this. My example is number 1. So we have this quadratic of 3b squared minus 4b equals 0. And they want me to solve it 2 ways. So for me, maybe I'm not sure what method I want to attack with first, but there's one method that always works pretty nicely, and that's quadratic formula. So my first method is going to be quadratic formula. And I suggest as you write these out on your paper, you label them very clearly, and then you write really nicely, because what we're going to have you do next is take your work and take it over to Flipgrid and explain it, and that's going to be the test on this topic. The quiz, instead of being like a normal quiz, you're going to be doing a Flipgrid as a quiz. So for our quadratic, and this one's a little weird, it's 3b squared minus 4b. There's no constant term equals 0. So when I go to use quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. When I go to determine a and b and c, I have to remind myself what that means. So this is confusing because there's a b in the problem, but the coefficient for a is 3. And then the coefficient of b, careful, is a negative 4. And then the constant, which is c, is 0. So regardless of the type of solutions and how ugly they can be, quadratic formula always works. So be careful on this part. The opposite of our b term is going to be a positive 4. And then the formula continues, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So I don't like to write negative 4 squared because I know when I type that I got to be careful about parentheses. I'm just going to call it a positive 16 because that is negative 4 squared. And then minus 4 times a times c. So a was 3 and c was 0. And then large fraction bar, all of this is over 2 times a. So now we get to have fun simplifying this. I always have you guys calculate the discriminant first. So I'm going to use a little highlighter. What I mean by the discriminant is all that stuff underneath the radical. And this one actually kind of works out nice because this 4 times 3 times 0, that whole back part of it is 0. So you just end up with the square root of 16. So I have 4 plus and minus the square root of 16 over 6. And of course, we know what the square root of 16 is. Get the face out of the way. Square root of 16 is a 4, right? So we have 4 plus and minus 4 over 6. So now because we see we're going to have a rational set of answers, I'm going to split this up. I'm going to say x equals 4 plus 4 divided by 6. And also x equals 4 minus 4 divided by 6. I'm really running out of room now. All right, here we go. So this one simplifies to 8 over 6, which if I math that or entered that on my calculator or just simplified it, that would be a 4/3. And then over here, 4 minus 4 is 0, and 0 divided by 6 is still a 0. So I'm getting 2 rational solutions, 4/3 and 0. Now, what's kind of neat is when I go to do this problem again, the nature of those solutions kind of leads me in the right direction. Because I got rational solutions, that means I should be able to factor this problem. That's probably my favorite method of solving a quadratic. Unfortunately, not every quadratic can factor, but this one can because I can tell by the answers. So I'm going to rewrite it on the next page. 3b squared minus 4b. So method 2, we're going to factor. So number 1 again, it was 3b squared minus 4b equals 0. And then remember factoring, we've got that flow chart. So at the top it says look for any common factors. Well, we definitely have a common factor here. It's not really that exciting. It's just a b, but this is what factoring looks like. So if you factor a b out of that expression, you still have a 3b and then a minus 4. So now that we have the factors set up, you can take each one of your factors, which this is a factor and this is a factor, and set them equal to 0. And I'm real excited because I can tell that this is going to work out with the same answers as the last time I did the problem. So that's good news. So here we're solving. This one's already solved, so good news here. This one we have a couple steps. We're going to add the 4 over and then divide by 3. And I have such a bad memory that I can't remember if those were the same answers I got the last time, and they were. All right. So there you go. A problem done. 2 different methods for quadratics. I would suggest you guys kind of attack it the same way I did, where you start with the quadratic formula because you know it'll always work nicely, and then determine your next approach based on what your answers look like. So if you have radicals and weird things in your problem, that means factoring is not an option. But completing the square would be an option, which I also like completing the square. Notice this question, completing the square, is not a good choice. That 3 in front, I would have had to divide everything by a 3, and then I would have had fractions, and we could have, but I really don't want to. So this is what you're going to work on next. So choose 2 problems on the worksheet, any 2. Do each of them twice, 2 different methods, depending on what the quadratic is. And then one of those problems where you did the 2 different methods, you'll present on Flipgrid. Okay, so write really nicely. Make sure you have something that you can take a picture of and upload into Flipgrid so we can all see what you're talking about. And have fun with it. All right, good luck.